Good morning, good morning, good morning. You beautiful, beautiful people in Charlotte. How do you guys like in Charlotte, North Carolina so far?
The weather.
Woo! Awesome. Well, I'm a little biased because I grew up here, and I'm so proud of my hometown city. For those of you that do not know who I am, I'm Ebony K. Williams, and I'm really delighted to be moderating Marijuana Money Madness this morning because this is an emerging and vibrant entrepreneurship opportunity and business opportunity that many in our community, as you see this fine panel I'll introduce in a moment, are engaged and are maximizing this, but many of us are not because we just don't know. So what we're gonna do today is really unpack a lot of the barriers of getting into this business that is, kind of emerging right in front of our eyes, which is cannabis. We're gonna talk about strategies to get mentorship so that we are operating under best practices in this business. And most importantly to me, again, here's my personal bias because I used to be a lawyer, don't judge me. We're gonna unpack the legal aspects, right? Because that's really important. When you're talking about a business that has some conflict, so to speak, of laws as to the legality from the state and local jurisdictions to the federal jurisdiction, we wanna make sure we're getting that right. So thank all of you for joining us this morning on this really, really exciting and important conversation around how to maximize the business aspect of the cannabis marijuana industry. Thank you. So I talked a little bit about what we're gonna unpack, and now I'm gonna tell you about the people that are gonna help us unpack it, because again, this is an exciting, new potential business opportunity, but again, it's really important that it's navigated in the proper way, because we wanna make sure that we are making money, right? We're all here at this conference because we wanna learn how to maximize the making money component, but we wanna do it in a way that ultimately protects our legal and business interest, right? Absolutely. So here to help us with that, Neil Janija? Okay, excuse me, Neil Janija. He is founding and managing partner at Glean Law Firm, which has got offices in California, Oregon, and Washington State. He's an intellectual property attorney, which means that, again, he's uniquely qualified in this space. That's very, very important. He's got a track record of engaging with his clients from a personal and professional level, and he navigates the complexities concerning, again, these conflict of law components. So we're talking about patents, we're talking about trademarks, copyrights, all those important aspects of this marijuana legal industry. As a lawyer, he believes in supporting his clients and their dreams, and he brings that level of character to his practice as a specialist, again, in this emerging industry, and that's really, really important. Neil is also a member of the Washington Bar Association, the Federal Bar Association in Washington, and the U.S. Patent Bar, all three separate bar associations. He's also a member of the Minority Cannabis Business Association. Ladies and gentlemen, Neil Janija. Yes, thank you. Sitting next to Neil is Ms. Hope Wiseman. Hope is credited as being the youngest woman to kind of own and operate a cannabis industry, and that's really, really a cannabis business. She's the founder of Mary and Main. Hope, along with her mother and two business partners, will be opening this dispensary very, very soon in the Prince George County area in Maryland. Only 26 years old, it's quite incredible what Hope has been able to do in the business. She is also a former investment banker and was really able to take a lot of those skills learned in the professional climate there and transition those into, again, this exciting emerging business in cannabis. And she really works towards negating some negative stereotypes that exist, particularly in our communities of color, when it comes to marijuana business. And she will be sharing her journey and her experience being successful in that space. Hope Wiseman.
Thank you.
Sitting next to Hope is Miss Dashita Dawson. Now, this is her self-proclaimed title, the weed head, right? And we laugh at that, but really a lot of what Dashita does is she talks about the rebranding and the marketing associated with marijuana and cannabis, because almost all of us at least have one kind of knee-jerk reaction to that. And Dashita is doing incredible work around rebranding and really how we reimagine what it is to work in cannabis and marijuana. She is a former senior buyer at Target and, similar to Hope, able to take those corporate skills and transition them into this bustling new business venture and make the best practices model really work for her. She's a storied speaker. She is contributing to platforms like entrepreneur.com, the Cannabis Business Conference, Cannabis World Congress and Business Expo, and plenty of others. She's got an academic background. All three of these young men and women do, but this woman, Dashida, has a molecular biology degree from Princeton University and a Rutgers MBA. So she definitely knows what she is talking about, Ms. Dashida Dawson.
Thank you.
Okay, so Neil, I'm gonna start with you because we're gonna get into the nitty-gritty of making money, how to get licenses, all of these exciting things that we're all here in this room to talk about. But first and foremost, let's full stop around the legal components, right? So I currently live in New York State, and I can tell y'all firsthand the way the political climate is shifting around marijuana law. It is faster than your head could spin. I mean, it's absolutely incredible, right? I mean, we're seeing it play out in real time right now as the governor's race is coming up, and you're seeing shifts from Andrew Cuomo, and Cynthia Nixon is challenging him in a primary, and literally they're calling it the weed effect, as it is that severely impacting the political climate. So in a way, that's very, very exciting. So Neil, I want to ask you specifically about I called it the conflict of laws, and without getting too much in the legal weeds, just so y'all understand where we're going with this. Certain states and jurisdictions in this country have legalized either or and medicinal marijuana and recreational marijuana. Couple baseline facts for y'all to know. In the United States of America right now, there are 29 states, along with the District of Columbia, that have legal medicinal marijuana. There are also 9 states in our country, along with DC, that have legal recreational marijuana. So that all sounds very good. Keep in mind, you have to keep in mind that still under the United States federal law, also known as the DEA, the Drug Enforcement Association, it is still illegal, okay? It is still considered a Schedule I drug, okay? So inquiring minds want to know, Neil, how do we reconcile, this kind of conflict of laws where in certain states and jurisdictions there is a legal, medicinal, and or recreational opportunity there, but federally there is still some level of risk?
The risk isn't zero, so it is illegal federally. It's a Schedule I on the Controlled Substances Act, which means there's no medicinal value. So the DEA absolutely can go ahead and arrest people for this. On the state level, we've gone in a different direction. As you said, 9 recreational states at least. That says, we're going to go ahead and experiment with this. So we're going to legalize it, we're going to regulate it, we're going to tax it, and that's the way it's going to be. Now, the federal government reserves the right to go ahead and raid the states for doing this. We have certain parts of the budget bill that restrict their ability to finance the raids against medical marijuana, but not recreational cannabis. So I think when you go into it, you have to understand, look, we might get into some trouble, but most likely we're going to see them coming from quite a distance. They're not going to go ahead and raid and confiscate property. They're probably going to send letters first, and they're really going to take the tallest blades of grass first. So be the second largest in your state.
Okay, I like it. I'm just going to stick with the legal for 1 second, and then we're going to open it up here. So not zero risk, some risk. What are some best practices, Neil, as to how to not attract that type of federal attention that you're speaking about that could be at play?
Well, you've got to follow what used to be called the Cole Memo, which is a number of priorities. You don't sell to children. You don't use it as a guise to sell other drugs. There's no violence involved. One of the things that they're really looking for is organized crime in this. So if there is a deep Italian accent, you really need to look into it and make sure that the money is as clean as possible if you're bringing it in.
That's real, though. Absolutely.
That is absolutely real. and it is happening.
Absolutely. So as a former myself criminal defense attorney who used to practice both in Charlotte and in the Triangle area, Raleigh, Durham, Chapel Hill, I worked for one of my great mentors in the field. Some of y'all probably know him, Butch Williams. And Butch taught me a saying when I was a baby lawyer, which is what we don't do is hustle backwards, right? So to that question, Neil, for those that are in this or trying to get into this cannabis space in a way that is profitable, and to the extent that their jurisdiction affords it some legality stateside, how do people not hustle backwards? How do they try to avoid getting hemmed up in the federal jeopardy, if you will, around it?
The key is, I mean, I'm here in North Carolina, I'm seeing people jaywalking. It seems okay, it's illegal, right? It's not enforced. So it really comes down to a political question. When you get involved in it, get into the industry groups, create PACs, go ahead and make it a political issue. It's a third rail, nobody wants to enforce it. Washington, my home state, has generated over $1 billion in tax from direct sales of cannabis this year, not to mention the tens of thousands of jobs. They are not gonna let the feds come in and fight it. So, and that's gonna be the case in every jurisdiction. Go ahead and make those people elected that back this.
I think that's really important what Neil is talking about, y'all, which is driving up, really bolstering a political force around it that can compete with kind of the legal challenges that you may face. Hope, I now want to transition to your experience because, again, not just being a completely, youngest person in this game, but also, how it's not easy. Let's just say that. And I want to start for those of you that, like me, don't have a whole lot of background in this. I was shocked to hear how a lot of states have licensing caps, for instance, and it could be as few as 5 in the entire state that end up ultimately succeeding in getting a license. So talk a little bit about how difficult it was for you and your business partners to be able to acquire your license in the state of Maryland, because I know there was litigation around that, and I want you to tell that story, and talk about how the obstacles, how big they were for you guys to get into the space.
Wow. So we're here now in 2018. I started this process back in 2014, the year I graduated from Spelman. That's when the regulations in Maryland were first drafted and first approved and written into law. At that point, we were very excited. I think everybody in the state was very excited. We thought the process would happen very quickly. And no, I mean, 2018 is the beginning of the Maryland program, so it took that long to start, and I started my journey back then. So my first step was getting together a business plan, getting together my business partners, who I convinced my mother to go into business with me, and we have a second business partner, Dr. Larry Bryant, 2 very established dentists in the area. We had no idea what we were doing. I was probably much like a lot of you in this room, just very interested and excited about the opportunity, but I was completely green. We've heard a lot of weed puns in here, and that'll probably happen the whole talk, by the way, but we were completely green, had no idea what we were doing, spent hundreds of thousands of dollars employing consultants and lobbyists, trying to just get the lay of the land and understand it. Maryland decided they licensed 15 growers, 15 processors, and 102 dispensaries. Out of those 15 growers that were licensed, no minorities received a license, and the Black Caucus in Maryland threw a fit, as they should have. Maryland is 33% African American, and not to mention all of the disproportionate effects on the African American communities when it comes to the war on drugs. We deserve a place in this industry. The Black Caucus did not allow this to happen. Say it one more time, louder for the people in the back, please. Yes, we deserve a place in this industry. However, we as African Americans have to make sure that we are prepared and qualified, and that we actually can do it. It takes a lot of capital. It takes a lot of experience. It takes tenacity. I haven't worked. I left corporate America in 2014. I stayed for, 2015. I stayed for a year after I got out of college, and I left that for this. I've dedicated my life to this plant and to this industry. And that is what it takes at this point. As an owner-operator, I'm on the front lines, and like you said, I mean, we have the chance right now to influence regulation. I'm down in Annapolis at the State House testifying at bill hearings. I mean, it takes that in this industry at this point. It's really crazy.
Absolutely, and I'm going to move to marketing and strategy and branding, which is really a huge part of this, y'all,
Yes.
with Deshita in a minute, but I want to follow up with something you said, Hope. I want you to talk a bit about mentorship.
Yes.
Because while the industry is emerging and exciting and new, there are some players in the game that really understand the ins and outs of this. I want you to talk about how helpful or maybe resistant some of the people that are kind of the old guard, so to speak, of a very new business model have been for you and your business partners, and what tips you would suggest for people that are looking to find mentors in the space.
Well, initially, I was just going to a lot of networking events within the industry, and I think that's a great place for anyone to start. The industry is very small right now, and I think that a lot of people are willing to help at this point, especially minorities. We stick together. Deshita, we met a while ago, and we're part of a network that is very close-knit, and they have, really helped me on my journey a lot.
Specifically, just so people can take note right now, what are some of the organizations that you guys belong to? I know Neil is it Minority Cannabis?
Minority Cannabis Business
Business Association. Are you guys all a member of that? So that's a big one.
Shanita Penny is the president.
The president,
Yeah,
yes.
We're all friends.
And we all know Shanita, yeah.
She's also my soror.
Good soror, yes, good soror, Shanita, exactly. So any other organizations that you guys can recommend?
I started with Women Grow, and I think that's probably where a lot of people started in this industry.
Yes, women
between
in
Are
that
you,
Women
in
Grow.
that as well, Women Grow?
Men and women.
Women Grow. Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, sure.
Yeah, some of the best speaking events are
The
at
Women
Women's
Grow.
Grow, at least in Oregon. They do a good job.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
same
it's going to
here.
vary by state
Yeah.
for their local chapters. NCIA is a big one. That's National Cannabis Industry Association.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh,
And
yeah,
of course,
yeah,
I
of
wasn't
course.
going to leave out
of
minorities
course
for
not.
medical
Yeah.
marijuana. I mean, but I knew that I would probably get to it.
So give us that name. of Women Grow.
Minorities for medical marijuana.
Minorities for Medical Marijuana.
Yes.
Yes,
We've got
I'm
the
the
min-
Maryland chapter president.
Oh,
And I'm a chief
excellent.
strategy officer.
Okay, so those are some groups, y'all. Maryland, the
Minorities for medical
Minorities
marijuana.
for medical marijuana.
marijuana.
Okay, all three.
And
The
the
Minority
Minority
Cannabis
Cannabis
Business
Business
Association and Women Grow.
Yeah.
All right, so there we have it. So now, Ms. Deshita,
Yeah.
you go from Target to cannabis, marijuana, very kind of different consumer bases. But I want you to talk about how the experience you learned at Target and in the corporate structure, you were a senior buyer there, how those skills were really important to transfer your ability to be successful in this space.
Oh, absolutely. So yeah, I am Deshita Dawson, and I'm a self-proclaimed corporate to cannabis crossover, right? And we need more of them. And going from Target to THC was not something that was a natural thing at all. I had several other roles, went to Victoria's Secret. But I have, in all of these experiences, sold to America, and all of these experiences had to transform thoughts around things that were considered taboo. Worked in the natural hair space, been natural all my life, but watched that transition where people were literally like unsure if this was something that was okay for them. Worked in the plus size market also, feeling like we had to re-educate and rebrand what it meant to be plus size and fabulous. And seeing a lot of that same thing happen here. I entered the market as a patient and a consumer, and I'm proudly so, but I felt like the experience in Arizona where I entered the market, I am a medical marijuana patient, it was just incongruent with what I knew the plant could do as a molecular biologist. And as a business strategist, I immediately saw opportunity to rebrand cannabis, especially for people of color, because there was health and wellness opportunity, but there was also the social justice aspect. And then last but not least, obviously, that business and wealth generation.
So now, because when I moderate a panel, I always tend to go a little bit provocative. I want to ask a question that I don't hear a lot of people talking about, which is the respectability politics of it all.
Yep.
Okay? So when we talk about people of color, you talk about a corporate to cannabis crossover. I know a lot of people, black folk in particular, black professionals in particular, are resistant to the notion of being associated with marijuana, weed, cannabis, whatever we want to call it, because many of us feel we have worked incredibly hard, gone to the right schools,
Yeah.
lived in the right neighborhoods, belonged to the right civic organizations, to not be associated with drug culture, okay? So how do we counter that narrative and that apprehension, Deshita? And I'm going to take it around the panel, but I'll start with you.
Yeah, I think that facts tell and stories sell, and I feel like it's about bringing more stories to the forefront. People don't realize that the facts are that the fastest growing legal users are actually women of color, by and large due to medical issues. I became a patient for autoimmune issues. If I can take even a show of hands in the room, how many people have autoimmune issues?
Lupus,
it would be lupus,
all of
MS, all of that. And I felt like I wanted to be a patient with dignity. And so I had to step out from behind the closet and say, hey, I'm a patient, I'm a user, and I'm still the same person that everyone knew.
Still the Ivy League graduate, still the corporate person.
My brain
Absolutely.
still works exactly the same. And that's dispelling the myth just by telling my story. But I also work to bring stories to the forefront, like Hope's and others that are in the industry, and say, hey, there are more of us.
Yeah, Hope, your mother, your business partners, you guys are, a prominent dentist in the area. So talk about this narrative and this stigma issue, please.
I mean, we definitely received a lot of pushback in the beginning, especially my mother and Dr. Bryant from the healthcare community in Prince George's County. Prince George's County is the most affluent African American county in the United States. And that being said, it still has areas of extreme poverty in it. So we experienced a lot of pushback from church leaders, our community groups. We went to Capitol Heights is the city that my actual dispensary is in, and they have it's a very small city. I mean, maybe a population of maybe 1,000. I went to their mayor's meeting, and they almost asked us to leave. And I just felt so offended.
What year was that? This was 20,
this was
2016, maybe?
2017. Maybe. Yeah, last year. So, it's just it's interesting. I'm like, wow, like we have a profit share program with the city. You don't want to speak to us? But we deal with it a lot. I think my answer to that is to educate and talk about the medicinal value and really teach people about the science behind the medicine. Because I think when you hear that and then you hear these stories about how people have either just had a better quality of life or actually healed themselves through the power of cannabis, your mind changes. You're not thinking about drugs and guns and buying weed around the corner. That's not what these medical facilities are. That's not even what these recreational facilities are.
No.
So I think it's important that I start with the science behind the medicine and really teaching about the medicinal values, because I find that usually changes people's minds.
Excellent. Neil, from your experience working with clients and things of this nature, what have been some of the perception challenges that you've encountered?
There's definitely still a stigma, but I think it's dropping away. From a legal perspective, we expected the old stodgy lawyers to look at us and say, that's too bad. Instead, they were all intellectually very curious about it. And I mean, we're here at an entrepreneur summit. This is the fastest growing industry of our generation. It's destroying the dot-coms in terms of growth rate.
Yep.
It's equivalent to cell phones. We can change minds. Every person with a bad perception is an opportunity for conversation while we're making money.
That's great. And also to follow up with that, Neil, from, again, the legal perception, everybody, in the law knows that oftentimes technology and business turn its head faster than the law can turn its. That said, we are seeing pretty rapid legislative change in this space. I would say almost unprecedented, in really any of my generation. So can you talk about, I know you don't have a crystal ball, but theoretically, what is the direction that the federal legalization process is going right now?
I think we're going to see it. We've been having a betting pool on this for the last 4 years, and I keep losing, so I'd like to just start with that. I'm always wrong here, but I think it'll be 2 to 4 years. It's completely federally legal.
Yeah.
Canada just legalized.
Wow. Yep.
Mexico is slightly medical, but we're getting things through their legislation. Uruguay has been legal for a long time. Most of Europe is hitting it. Israel is at the forefront right now. it's the dominoes are almost there.
Yeah, I mean, we saw legislation just yesterday at the federal level. I know it was co-sponsored by Senator Liz Warren and another, but I mean, and at least this administration is entertaining that, and it looks like could very well, maybe you'll win one of these pools coming up here, Neil, because it looks like it's going in that direction. Okay, listen, I could be up here asking these fantastic, uniquely qualified experts questions all day, but I anticipate that you have some burning ones of your own. So we're going to get started. We're going to pass a mic. Miss Pamela is going to come around, and hands are shooting up. Just state your name and your question.
Sure, my name is Mike Coburn. Quick question, how do you guys see the rollout of THC beer in recreational states? I saw Keith Vila, the former brewmaster of Blue Moon. He just started a company. Constellation Brands, who make Corona, they bought a company in Canada.
Yep.
But there's TTB issues here.
I just met a CEO of a THC-infused alcohol company, and we were on a panel together at Yale. I think it's interesting because it's almost like the assumption is because right now in a lot of the markets, I have clients in pretty much work in every legal market at this point. A lot of the markets, the distribution is run through the alcohol, I guess, and liquor board, if you will. And so people see that immediate congruency, because if you meet a certain standard for beer and alcohol, then you're probably going to meet the standard for the state. I actually think it's, again, me in a rebranding perspective, it's a mix of two worlds that kind of continue to perpetuate some of the stereotypes. I don't say recreational, I say adult use. I think it means you have an adult choice to use something that can give you a medicinal benefit. Every single time you use cannabis, there's a medicinal benefit. That is not the case for alcohol. So I just wanted to point that out.
Great. Next question.
Hi, my name is Sarita Florenton, and I was curious about the investment aspect of it, the stock options, things that are starting to show up in the marketplace that are that you guys can give us some tips about that we should, be looking for.
Yeah, I mean, go ahead.
I would avoid it right now. In terms of at least investing in cannabis stocks, it's too uncertain of an industry. Most of the time, they don't own the actual cannabis licenses or the plant because they're state regulated, and every person who has investment dollars in has to go through proper vetting. So really, you're owning a land management company or the IP company or a consulting company. And most of them, you've seen all of the values drop quite a bit. So unless there's a really solid company, I really wouldn't dump money into the OTC stocks or the Canadian market on it.
I would go into private investing
Yes.
right now in cannabis. Right now, companies are doing really well because of the fact that it's federally illegal and it's state regulated. There are caps on licenses. So like I said, in Maryland, there's only 15, well, there are really 14 growers. 15 were licensed, one dropped out for legal reasons, but, and they're about to license a few more companies because of the whole African American issue that I was telling you before.
Right.
After that, the pool will be locked out until 2024. So as you can see, there's ample time for these companies to make a lot of money.
So we're talking about a window here,
Yes.
basically.
There's
There's
a
a window.
window.
So y'all hear that? There's a window here that is existing now that it sounds like
It exists right now
2024-ish.
in Maryland.
In
I mean,
Maryland,
every
it's
state
state by
has
state.
its own, regulations. Some states are coming on. New Jersey's about to come on. Pennsylvania just did a round. You just have to be on top of it. You have to be right there.
I would also add that that's in the plant touching world. You can't
Yes.
obviously be on the stock exchange, but in the ancillary space, there are some businesses that are taking really great strides because they're the picks and the shovels. So if you think about the gold rush, the people that made the most money, Levi Strauss, for example, were people who were clothing people who were out there looking for the gold, not the folks looking for the gold. So Kush Bottles, for example, is one of the largest public cannabis companies. They make the storage, they make the packaging, all the childproof stuff. They're pretty much a national brand at this point. I'll give an example of them, but they don't have any competitors really. And a good market has a McDonald's, a Wendy's, and so we're looking for the B, the C, the D, the E. So look in that place too.
I want to reiterate this point because, again, for those that are not as familiar, there is a distinction between the plant-touching side of this, which is still under some level of legal scrutiny, and the ancillary part, right? So if you're looking to take a less of a risky move, it sounds like the ancillary space is
Much
wide
so.
open.
Yeah,
Well, technically,
absolutely.
we are, Neil and I are both ancillary businesses. We support the fabric of the industry. But there are other ones, like accessories is one I just talked about.
Real estate, right?
Real
That's,
estate
you
is
know,
another
there's
one.
certain zoning
Mhm.
issues
Security.
around this stuff and
Yeah,
technology.
security.
Accounting
All
is an
types
all
of-
cash
yeah.
business, yeah.
Excellent. Next question.
Well, my name is Tracy Shanklin, and that's what I was going to ask you all to please speak to that, because a lot of times when I'm presenting and talking about cannabis businesses, it's well, how do I get started in a dispensary? That's hundreds of thousands of dollars,
Millions.
and a
Millions.
lot, millions of money. Where if you are in any kind of business and you are considered an expert in that business, think about making a niche market in
Yes.
that business. And so I would again,
Absolutely.
please implore
And
you
we
all to
need
speak
you. The
toward
industry
yes,
needs you.
absolutely.
I was just
We'll
about
make
to
it a
say.
lot faster if there were more corporate to cannabis crossovers or entrepreneurs who have a true expertise and
Yes.
are just
And are
getting
yielding that credibility. So
Yeah,
much
yeah.
of this is around the credibility component, right? And I think as we sit here in this room today, think of the collective credibility that's engaging in this dialogue. I think it's a perfect shining example. Yes, ma'am. Next question.
Hi, my name is Tiara. My name is Tiara Brown. I'm in Prince George's County, so hey there. I have a question. I am very small business. I do edibles. I want to know how I can fully immerse myself into the industry
Right.
legally.
Well, okay, so first off, Maryland does not allow edibles.
I know.
Every state has their own regulations. Sometimes they're kooky and we don't understand. Yeah, I think Maryland was a little afraid they didn't want to engage the Food and Drug Administration. It's just a lot of stuff.
There's the question about children
Then
eating it.
children,
how
it's
keep it
hard
out
with
of-
dosage, with edibles. There's a lot of
Yeah.
reasons. So Maryland just shied away from it. However, there's DC right across the street. DC is kind of a gray market. I don't like to say that out loud, and I'm being recorded. But
technically isn't a market,
yeah,
yeah.
it's kind of a gray market right now. But technically, the way to do it legally would be to partner with somebody who has a processing license and to produce your products through their company. That's very difficult, though, especially in DC. There's only, I believe, 6 people with that license. So you would have to get in there, build that relationship, and somehow make some type of deal with them to be able to produce your products through them. And same way in Maryland when it does become legal, because I'm sure it will be.
Absolutely.
Yes,
yes,
no
ma'am.
problem.
Hi, my name is Latoya Finney, and my question is related to Michelle Alexander wrote about the new Jim Crow. We talk about ways to get ourselves involved in the business, but many people are not included in the opportunity. So when you're thinking about building business models and employing the community and maybe giving back to the community, what are your recommendations about looping in people that might have been disenfranchised as a result of this same business? And it has to be very hurtful and difficult for them to watch this grow and know that they cannot be part of it. So industry-wise, what can we do as minorities or for minorities to address that?
And I'll ask, I love that question, Toya, and also like kind of what roles specifically can some of these people that don't, they're not gonna generate $500,000 of capital to necessarily go into that space, but what are some roles that they can benefit as well?
Well, I think that's why Minorities for Medical Marijuana is such an amazing organization that, we feel like a family. We understand that there needs to be bail to bud kind of transition. And in a lot of states, from the door, the legislature is set up to prevent people who even have touched the plant and have gotten some sort of felony or jail time as a result of it. So we fight from that level to say, no, actually we need set aside. No, we actually need more equity. No,
So
we
you're
need
talking about
programs.
legislative
Yes,
efforts.
you
Yeah,
actually
there are
have to be
states
an
that are doing it.
advocate to do that. Massachusetts is actually one of the states in the
Oakland.
forefront.
Oakland.
Oakland as well.
Michigan,
But
Pennsylvania.
you need
Yep.
to fight for it before it
Ohio.
becomes the law, and otherwise it's sometimes retroactively so hard. Some of the jobs that are really important because they understand cultivation, like these are the true cultivators. Like your plug is probably the guy you really want growing your stuff, real talk. And so they need to probably be at the cultivation site or in the dispensary, but that's the area where I feel like most times you can't be.
We can't, yeah.
So I look in sales.
And is that, when you say they can't, I just want to be clear here.
Legally,
That's
I cannot
because-
hire
Right.
someone who has. Maryland
a-
is,
a
they're
record.
definitely trying their hardest to work on that. The Black Caucus has done a lot. They've introduced a lot of bills to work on that. I think at the state level, they are trying their very best. And we, and especially like my company, I'm an owner operator of a plant touching business. That's why it's so important that I'm there when that bill is being presented to testify in support of it. It's very important, and they are hearing us.
The stakes are very, very high in that space. I think everybody's got to really listen to what is being said, which is that the political advocacy component is as important as the business entity. Thank you. Next question.
How you doing? My name is Sean Tolliver. I'm the CEO of Canatrax. We do merchant payment systems, CRM, point of sale for cannabis and cannabis-related facilities. And I wanted to know, what were you guys' thoughts on the technology solutions that you think your industry needs? Obviously, we know we have a cash problem, and our company is solving that. We're allowing dispensaries to be able to take payment via stored value cards. But in addition to that type of problem, what other technology or software do you guys feel like you need in that space to be addressed? Because we're trying to position ourselves as a top-tier technology company specifically for cannabis.
Yeah, I think that's excellent, by the way. I mean, that's amazing. Yes, congratulations. As a dispensary, I mean, we've gone through all the POS systems out there for cannabis businesses, and we don't really like any of them. Yeah. We had to pick one. Well, yeah, I mean, a lot of things, there are a lot of different softwares that are all different, and I wish they were all in one, because a lot of them don't interface together, and then you're dealing with a state system that you have to kind of interface with. It gets very difficult, so if you could find a way to kind of marry it all together, which it sounds like you all are trying to do, I mean, that's amazing, because I don't find that any system is perfect that's out there right now for cannabis. I don't like any of them. Oh yeah, we're Metric in Maryland, and Metric is having problems in itself, because I've told people people should go and actually try and get these state contracts like Metric did. I mean, Metric is a terrible company.
Gotta be real.
Okay, that's.
Yeah. That's how this industry does with everything. They kind of make it, they shut you out.
It's an inroad. Yeah,
yes.
Absolutely. Thank you, sir. Yes, ma'am.
Hi, my name is Brandy Fox, and I own Pamper Us Mobile Massage Service here in Charlotte, and we are a 100% mobile spa company, including massage therapy. So in the massage industry, we've been hearing a lot of push about like CBD oil, hemp oils, and all those type of things. This is for me in the past 2 weeks. So I am curious, is there something that I can legally offer my clients? Because we do a lot of in-home services for, people that have autoimmune issues.
In North Carolina, you hear? Hemp, this is what I was going to get into. Like, people forget the cannabis plant is actually is hemp and marijuana. When we talk about cannabis, I'm talking about both. I have clients in both worlds. Hemp is really big here, and CBD is actually sold pretty much everywhere that I can see. And so I think if you can look specifically at the law here, we're getting CBD that's made from hemp. You can actually get probably a Black-owned supply chain fairly easily. Let's connect afterwards for sure, because there's already product in the pipeline.
Yeah. I want to ask, as far as CBD goes, it's really about the source, not where you are.
Yes.
If you email either of us, we can send you the most up-to-date laws. They change weekly.
Yeah.
Okay. And to that point, Neil, I want to, for men and women in this room that have businesses that are maybe looking for these ancillary opportunities, what kind of lawyer do they need to seek out if they don't have, the kind of mecca of marijuana law like your firm does? What other kind of lawyer can be helpful to them?
A good one. As far as CBD goes, the #1 CBD attorney is in Asheville, as a matter of fact.
North Carolina. Okay.
That doesn't surprise me, given the hemp.
I think we actually call him quite a bit.
Okay.
If we have any questions. As far as in your state, it's going to depend if your state's regulatory system is large enough to support a specialist.
Right. But short of a specialist, what other type of, if they're just doing a Google search, what kind of lawyer do they need?
A business attorney is best. Administrative law is good. Somebody with political capital is great.
Right. I think that's been a running theme all conversation, is that political component is very key. Yes, ma'am. Yes, sir.
My name is Nasser, and I just wanted to know what was the application fee for each of you in your state with submitting it for your business?
Washington was $1,000. Oregon's a few $100, California it varies, but yours are probably, you
So
need
Maryland,
a couple million
well,
capital, right?
Yeah, so for Maryland, the actual application fee, I think for dispensaries was it was $1,000, and then for grow processing it was $2,000. However, you also had to show your capitalization through the whole process. Maryland didn't force you to put it in an escrow account or show a bond, but other states will force you to do that in advance of you winning a license. So if you have to show $4 million, it would have to be an escrow account before you win.
I was going to say, I think, we
People
don't
have it.
It's
They
usually
have it. It's
invested,
there.
though.
But yeah, it's normally
It's not just
investor
sitting
money. It's
around.
definitely investor money. So you definitely have to navigate it. You have to make sure that you're not being taken advantage of by investors. Maryland didn't require that the first round. They just required you to show access to the capital.
Yes.
I believe in this next application round they will require.
And when we talk about capital, just so nobody's leaving here with a misconception, don't be misled by these $1,000, $2,000, $5,000 application fees. What we're really talking about is between $500,000 to multiple millions of dollars.
We spent $200,000 before when we were applying. That's how much we spent to get our application together.
200,000?
200,000
just to
do
get
that,
there.
and we could have lost, and that would have been nothing.
And this is specifically to get a license to grow and touch the plant,
Yes. Plant touching.
for marijuana. There are a lot of states where you have to look at what you're licensing and growing. For hemp, it's a lot lower cost.
much lower cost,
And then
yeah.
if you're ancillary, I paid only the cost to set up my LLC, right? So, I mean, just to think about that entry point.
Yes,
Yes.
risk-reward spectrum. Yes, sir.
My name is Fred Patterson, and as a believer in the bud, my question is, in the United States that is legalized in, it is a cash-intensive business.
Yes.
Okay, and we all know, I hate to use the term, but banks are greedy. Okay, the bill that was recently being introduced by Elizabeth Warren, do you guys see the banks stepping in and saying, hey, there's a lot of cash out there, we need to get this thing legalized, and then that way it comes from being a really cash-intensive business to being able to also use credit cards or debit cards or whatever. Would they kind of step in, because when you get the bank lobby behind things, it tends to move it along a little faster.
I agree. I think that once the banks actually do figure out how they make money from this process, a lot of people, once they figure out how they make money, it will become legal. And that's why the window part, is so important, because once that happens, it's actually going to eliminate a lot of opportunity in the space, to be perfectly honest. I'm not necessarily looking forward to it.
I'm not either. As a dispensary owner, talking about federal legalization, I'm like, no, not yet. We're not ready yet. Yeah, we're not ready yet. Give us I need 10 years. That's how, in my mind.
We need more market share.
As people of color, we're not ready yet. There's still only 1% in the industry. If we allow this to go fully legal without more of us coming
Johnson & Johnson
and standardizing,
coming in.
it is a wrap.
It's a wrap.
over.
I want to say this, because I think, again, this is important. I respect exactly what y'all are saying, but the truth is this train's moving full steam ahead whether we're ready or not.
Yes.
Right? So then we have a sense of urgency. I believe President Barack Obama called it the fierce urgency of now, quoting Dr. King.
Yes.
Not to cross-reference too much, but I think this is very serious. I think when we talk about conversations in our community, and I'm gonna get to your question in 1 second, ma'am, about reparations, about, to LaToya's point earlier, of black and brown men and women who have been kept out of this business, not just from a business aspect, but have been put in financial and legal jeopardy around this business, and we talk about reparations being a solution. Personally, I think that's, it's a noble attempt. It seems to be a pretty slow-moving conversation, and I'm not sure what, if anything, we'll gain from that approach.
Right.
But I think the opportunities in this moment, in this space, from a business standpoint, to get in on the ground level, as these people have already done, might be a more reasonable solution to the historical wrongs that our community has suffered as a result of marijuana and cannabis. Yes, ma'am.
So I'm based in Michigan, and there's a group of us who want to invest in the cannabis industry. So we don't necessarily want to do the work, we just want to support the work. So what recommendations do you have for investors in terms of how we should get started?
Actually just came back from Detroit. So that's an amazing opportunity, just FYI, especially for people of color in that state. I would say definitely join organizations because you meet people who are already in the business, and you can either get yourself around that particular business, but you also wind up getting flashed information like the Kush bottles, which is an inside tip, if you will. And I think that most of my knowledge has come from one-to-one conversations with people, as opposed to assuming you're going to get it in a Google search.
I'm going to run them down again. Minority medical marijuana.
Minorities
for medical marijuana, Women Grow, and Minority Cannabis Business Association. Yeah. Run those down.
Oh, absolutely. MJM Strategies, actually, we have a booth. We're downstairs at 522. Come see us after
at this conference.
The
That's
Biz
fantastic.
Hub.
I'll be there for a little while as well.
Hello, my name is Jillian Highshaw. I'm founder of Farms. And one of the things that I think that also needs to be emphasized is land. We can't grow anything without land, and we're losing land. So how do you basically encompass in your business land protection? Because I'm a lawyer, an ag lawyer for farmers of color in 10 states in the South, and we're losing land.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's very important, especially now as southern states are kind of jumping on the bandwagon. They're starting to legalize, especially a lot of hemp laws are being passed right now, so definitely look into that with your clients. In Maryland, most of the growers have warehouses, just so they can grow year round. Greenhouse space is not as big on the East Coast yet, but in the southern states, it's gonna be huge when it happens. So, I definitely think there's a need for it. I don't know as much about the fact that we're losing a lot of land, but there's definitely a large need for what you do.
Okay, we're gonna take these final 3 questions and then we'll wrap. Yes, sir.
Hey, Alonzo Alston, and I just wanted to get the panel's perspective on the different indexes that are popping up now for weed companies, marijuana companies. Are you pro it? Are you negative on it? And why or why not? For instance, there's a company called Cash Crops that indexes things, but they're on an equivalent of like the pink sheets. So it's obviously very speculative, but I'd just love to hear your feedback.
I'm not we're on camera. I would say just the politically correct answer is that you just, right now it is federally illegal here, and some of the penny stocks that I've been seeing on some of these sites that you're talking about, I'm not necessarily in agreement with. It is hard. I kind of agree with Neil. You don't want to necessarily invest too much. You definitely want to know more about the story, the people behind it. But there are a couple of public companies that are cannabis adjacent that I'm like, yeah, I see that they have potential. Yeah. So I would say that's my best politically correct
And the
answer.
alternative, if you can take something public, I would do that. It's a great way to raise money.
Yes, if you can.
Hi, my name is Rochelle Lynn, and I am a professional copywriter. And I have a question about what advice would you give to someone like myself, a small business owner who is extremely invested in the industry for a host of reasons, and how would you suggest that someone like me kind of make that transition to work with dispensary owners or people within the industry to, I'm not someone who's going to create a product, but who's really service-based and can help the brand grow from a business element?
One, can you please stop by my booth when we're done?
Right.
Yes.
That's what you do.
And you do that first. You're here for a reason. Drop your card, because we're always looking for that, at least at MJM Strategy. And 2, update your LinkedIn. Change your profile to indicate that you are a cannabis supporter, cannabis adjacent. That search in the SEO for LinkedIn changed my whole entire life in literally 6 months. People can then find you because they'll search cannabis and copywriter and you'll come up. Gosh, if they search black cannabis and copywriter, then it's even smaller pool. So set yourself up right in the digital space by declaring you are actually supporting the industry.
That's great advice. Yes, ma'am.
Hello, my name is Natasha Andrews, and I'm an attorney, and I am here in Charlotte. You mentioned the 9 states that have already passed legalization laws. What specific advice would you give to someone in one of the other 41 states in terms of that process? I know your journey was a 4-year journey that you hadn't anticipated. What things do you wish you had known that you could have prepared ahead of time before that legalization took place?
That's a tough one. I
Yeah.
mean, until the
Sorry.
regulations come out, so you have your statutes, your initiative, or your measure, or your, however the laws come into play, where you're going to do well and how you're going to do it is really based on the rules of the game. You can play Monopoly a lot of different ways. You can play it best knowing the rules. So outside of I happen to have a bunch of warehouses that might be in a legal area sitting around, it's a really tough situation. An easier way is ancillary. I'm a consultant. I'll tell you how to scale your business from your little basement grow into, you know, a 50-acre grow if that's legal. Those are really useful skills if done right.
And I think I wish I had known that I had the opportunity to influence regulations before they were finalized.
Yes.
It's
I didn't know
far
that.
easier than you'd think.
Yeah, I
And
mean,
on a state level.
Now, on a state level, yes. I mean, and I realize that now, and you know, that's why I keep pushing that. During the entire last session, I was there once a week at least, and I would stay all day, sometimes testify 5 and 6 times in a day. I mean, it's very serious and it's important, but it has helped my company so much because I was able to get regulations passed that benefit my company and our communities.
Yeah, to take down those barriers to entry.
Right.
That's very, very important. Yeah, final question.
No pressure. Hi, my name is Imani Dawson, and I actually work for MGM Strategy as a creative director. And my question is really about how we give the health and wellness benefits, like how we have multi-generational conversations with some of our elders who are thinking about it like, you know, we lost a whole generation of our children to the drug war and the disproportionate impact. And I'm just very curious, particularly to you, Hope, because you have a dispensary, at how you suggest having these conversations so we can help them understand that the health and wellness, the medicinal benefit for them is probably most important, having lost my mom.
Yeah, I completely understand. And my mom just went through a health scare herself and used cannabis through her process, so I completely understand. I had to go through this with my own grandmother who, I mean, if I was holding a little teeny bit of weed, she would think like the house was gonna blow up. So I had to have this conversation with her plenty of times. I always go back to the science. I always, you know, I'll show a video of a young child who's seizing and then their mother drops a few drops in their mouth and then they stop. And I think when people see that, they're amazed. They say, wow, this is really a true medicine. This really can help people. And then people who have lost people that could have used cannabis to either just alleviate their pain and give them a better quality of life, or potentially have given them a longer time to live. I think it's hard for them to now see other people benefiting from it and their family member was not able to. So those are the stories I like to tell, especially people of our older generations, because there's been so much propaganda pushed into their head for so many years. So it is, you know, I don't push it, I don't go too hard, too fast, but I would definitely, you know, just share experiences and stories and talk about the medicinal values with them.
And I'll add this to the lost generation of us who have been disproportionately convicted and incarcerated as a result of marijuana laws. I think it's important to speak to the fact that as tragic as it is and it has been, we're not going to get those lives back. We're not going to get that lost time back. So what we can do is be proactive in the opportunity that sits in front of our face right now, right? And I think telling that story and framing it in an opportunistic way, and I say that in the best possible light, might be what can serve that historical misconception around it best. We're going to do quick 1-sentence final thoughts from our panelists, and we're going to be dismissed. We'll start with you, Neil.
As far as from a business perspective, this is a one-shot deal. We're going to see the fastest growing industry. We're already in it. If you're thinking about it, do it now. Don't wait. We don't get a second shot at this.
Thank you. Hope?
Be unapologetic. Go for your dreams no matter how crazy they may seem, whether it is in this industry or in another. Don't let any barrier stop you. Don't let your age, your lack of education, your lack of experience stop you. Find those tools that you need and make it happen.
Deshita?
I would say don't enter unless you have a mission. Mine is to legitimize, to stabilize, and to diversify the industry. And I would suggest that everyone starts with education, followed by advocacy, be an evangelist, and then jump into the business. You'll be way more successful in the long run.
Thank you to Neil Janasia, to Hope Wiseman, and Deshita Dawson. Thank you all.
Thank you.